What is up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Phil Perry on the ground in Las Vegas will join us in just a second. We got so much to get to. Obviously, we're going to get Phil's intel from what he saw at practice, the first of the two joint practices the Patriots will go through with the Raiders. And from all indications, it wasn't so hot, especially for the offense. Was that tied to the Patriots trying to assimilate into their new offense? Was it the fact that the Raiders are that much further ahead because they've been in camp longer, having played in the Hall of Fame game? What's the root cause? But apparently it happened in 7-on-7s, it happened in 11-on-11s, and it happened in individual drills. And it didn't just happen with the Patriots offense struggling. Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, and company had their way, especially in individual drills against the Patriots defense. All this, of course, preps for the opener against Miami just 3 weeks out. And you can't help but look across the field as this is going on and say to yourself, you know, Josh McDaniels would have been a really good successor for Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick does have the right in many ways to write his own exit, okay? Even though Bill has been the one who can pull the plug on players when he thinks they're done or nearing done, Bill, at least as far as the Crafts believe, gets the opportunity to decide when Bill is done. There is no indication yet that he's given an indication that that's going to be the case. So when Josh McDaniels had an opportunity to go to the Las Vegas Raiders, he would have been happy to be convinced by the Patriots to not go. He would have been happy to stay here in New England. He had 5 kids, has 5 kids, bless him. Lived in Westwood, roots were sunk, loved working with Mac Jones, loved the opportunity. But no effort was made, as it was in 2018, to keep him around. So now Josh McDaniels is in Las Vegas. And much like Tom Brady, who didn't necessarily want to leave New England as he asked for extension after extension after extension and never got it, much like Brady, McDaniels didn't get what he thought he wanted, and he got what he needed. Oh, yeah. Sometimes it happens that way. All right, we're going to bring in the Senator Phil Perry right now. Phil, where are you? There he is.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Tom, hello from Henderson, Nevada.
All right, let's not waste any time. Phil, his boots on the ground. Let's get our money's worth sending him out there. What's your big picture takeaway from Tuesday?
Really rough day for the Patriots offense. Almost, Tom, similar to that practice that we saw a couple of weeks ago where we went live on Early Edition as it was finishing up. But it was the practice where David Andrews kind of rallied the entire offense around him and was very urgently sharing, his displeasure with them because they couldn't move the ball. They could barely make a positive play. That's what it felt like for about 75% of this practice.
75%?
About 75% of the practice. And I'm going to read you off some numbers, not statistics, not yards necessarily, but I had the Patriots through 3 11-on-11 periods, so their first 3 full team periods, as having 4 positive plays out of 18. It's not a great ratio.
Okay.
7 of their 8 runs appeared to be stuffed at the line of scrimmage or worse. A couple of tackles for loss in there. Mac Jones during those periods went 3 for 9. One of his passes was dropped, but another was picked by a linebacker, Jayon Brown. And the Raiders had a sack. So that was the first 3 11-on-11 periods. Now, they did pick things up in a big way at the end, and I think the players themselves took a lot from their successes during the 2-minute period. They drove the field. They converted on 3rd down. They managed the clock well. They were able to spike the ball while they were in scoring range, put it in the end zone, touchdown Kendrick Bourne. Big old spike from Bourne, who obviously has had a rough stretch of work the last week and a half or so. So it was a good finish, and David Andrews made mention of that after the fact. A much happier David Andrews than he was that night that I talked about from a couple weeks ago. But again, for the vast majority of this practice, it was a slog offensively.
When we talk about this, I think there's a mixed reaction on social media. Half of the reaction is, don't look good. And then there's that's to be expected. And then there's people who diminish it and say, well, it's practice. It's supposed to look like this. It's too far down the road to be saying it's just practice. It's supposed to look like this. I mean, it shouldn't look like this in passing camp. This is so far removed from what it's supposed to look like or what it should look like. And here's the other thing. We don't know what it's like to see a new offense installed. The last time a new offense was installed here was really 2000. And prior to that, it was like 1998 with Ernie Zampese. So you folks don't know what a new offense getting installed looks like. And I barely remember, but I know it ain't supposed to look like this. Phil, was this the new offense? Was this the offensive line? Was it the Patriots being overmatched physically in some instances? What's your best guess?
I think it's a little bit of the fact that it is just a new offense. And it's been reiterated to me by people who matter in the last 48 hours that this is a new offense. So what Mac Jones called it earlier. It's what I think we were all reluctant to call it because that's really not what the team was telling us publicly early on. Well, it's streamlined. Well, we're just emphasizing some things. No, it's new. What they emphasize, yes. Will we see plays that they've run before? Sure. But the communication is new. And so, there are guys that have been on this team for a long time that are doing something completely different than they have had to before. And so there is still an acclimation process going on here. I would say, Tom, to me, the issues still start on the offensive line. And I know it's just practice, so it's hard to tell run game. You're not getting tackled to the ground. But for 7 of your 8 competitive 11-on-11 runs to go nowhere is alarming to me still at this point. And I don't think it's being physically overwhelmed, though the Raiders have Chandler Jones and Max Crosby and some good physically talented guys. That to me is more of a communication and understanding of your assignments kind of issue.
Could communication be at the heart of what's going on with the experience level on this offensive line? I mean, we talk all the time about the quarterback and receivers have to see it through the same eyes. Trent Brown wasn't out there a ton. He's moved over. Cole Strange obviously knew. David Andrews is, having to make different line calls, and he's communicating to a less experienced right tackle. Isaiah Wynn is in and out, and it's a new language. From what you've been able to glean, is communication the root cause?
Tom, I think the offensive line's dealing with a lot right now.
Coaching?
The coaching's one thing, right? So Matt Patricia is supposed to be the offensive line coach, but he's also calling the plays, and there's a lot on his plate. And we've seen David Andrews running the offensive line, huddle on the sidelines during some of these preseason games. Billy Yates isn't with the team on the sideline during the preseason for the first half.
Must be up top.
He's up top probably, but then he's down on the field for the second half. There's a lot happening here. But again, it does come back to communication for me. And it's a little bit of a surprise because 4/5 of this offensive line, even though you've lost guys like Karras and Tooney and Mason, they've been around. Michael Wendu's in his 3rd year in the system here. Trent Brown's been around for several years. Isaiah Wynn's been here. David Andrews. So Cole Strange is really your one new cog. But what I've come to learn is that the language has changed. And so, for instance, the protections where they used to be identified numerically, now there's some words involved. So there's a translation process there. I don't think that's the reason why there are hiccups there, but there's some learning to do there. I think everything that they have done, everything that they have changed on the offense in general, but on the offensive line too, in particular, has been to allow guys to play faster and to think less.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the process of doing that, because it hasn't really taken yet, thinking less has led to more thinking in certain spots and slower understanding of what's happening on the field, again, in real time. And we're seeing some of the messy performances that we've seen. Now, I will say we didn't see, for instance, the free runners Mac Jones was talking about a week or two ago.
And how was the protection too? I mean, we saw so many aborted plays 2 weeks ago.
I thought it was okay. I thought the protection was not the biggest issue. He wasn't running for his life the way he was in some other practices, but he was sacked on one of his 11-on-11 snaps. And there were moments where things might have gotten a little muddy for him in a live game situation because he had to step up and away from pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But again, to me, it just comes back to the decision to change things in general, Tom, because you have a smart center, you have a smart quarterback who got things really well as a rookie last year. You have guys that have been in the system, seemed to have it down relatively well. And you come in this year and say, guys, we're scrapping it. But this is going to help you play faster, I promise. Yeah. And now we're into August 23rd and it hasn't worked yet.
And here's the interesting thing when you think about, okay, so why? Could it be attached to Nelson Aguilar, Jonnu Smith, Tyquan Thornton, all of these guys who you invested big money in? And I'm not saying for the short term, but I'm saying that type of player who you're going to bring in. It might not be up to speed, but hell, between Aguilar and Jonnu Smith, you're going to spend, close to $30 million in cap space this year. Mac Jones is making $3 and he's smart enough to switch. I wonder that really has to be the root of it as to why they're changing is, look, we can't be signing guys and everybody needs a damn apprentice year to figure out what in God's name we're running, which brings me to this question. Are the Raiders running the Patriots offense?
Yes. It looks very much like the Patriots offense.
Jesus.
You've got the fullback out there.
You got a fullback. You got a slot. You got oh boy, they're going to be.
And it's pretty evident, Tom. Even just watching the preseason games, you've got toss crack out there.
I know.
You've got all the screens, the variations on the screens that Josh McDaniels loved for so long, and you have a quarterback who I think already understands how to operate it pretty well. Although I will say this, just going back over some of my notes. And I thought the Raiders offense did beat up a little bit on the Patriots defense today, but it wasn't as drastic as if you see any completion stats out there from any of our colleagues, I don't think it's as drastic as some of the completion stats would let on. A lot of Derek Carr's completions today were checkdowns. And that's sort of who he is as a quarterback. But it also, to me, in a setting like this, a check down is almost and we try to mention this when we talk about Mac Jones's performance in a given practice. It's almost a win for the defense when you're not tackling. So I will say, that part of it looks like the Patriots too, where it's a lot of dink and dunk, the occasional over the top shot. But we haven't really.
They're running the Patriots offense.
Yeah, but we haven't seen it run with Devontae Adams in a long time. So it's nice for Josh McDaniels to have him because
and Waller's not out there, but you have a slot, you have a tight end, and you have one of the best wide receivers in the league. And I don't know when the Patriots had all three of those elements. Jesus, did they ever?
Well, you had Moss and Welker, but you didn't have the tight end piece to it. Probably.
I mean, right? I said up top that maybe Josh didn't get what he wanted in terms of the Patriots convincing him to stay and explaining to him that he could be the next head coach here because they just don't know when Bill's leaving. So he didn't get what he wanted, but he got what he needs. Am I right? A little bit. Does he seem a happy guy out there?
Yeah, he does. I mean, you still get the intensity from him, when the Raiders are, a lot of cursing on the sidelines, and we're right there. I mean, we were for the early part of practice, the Raiders' first team offense was working right in front of us. The way it was set up was actually even hard to see through the players and see what was going on the field right in front of us. It was easier to see what was going on the field where the Patriots were playing. But yeah, a lot of intensity and a lot of, if you're slow in and out of the huddle, that sort of stuff that, ticks off Josh McDaniels because it was so heavily emphasized here. That stuff it's still just as much of an. God damn it!
Oh boy. What else can you give me the skinny on? Are you expecting another arduous practice tomorrow? Game is on Friday, so 2 days before the game.
I am. Can I say, I think we did, I mentioned it offensively, but the 2-minute drill for the defense was also kind of a dominant performance. So even though the Patriots took it on the chin,
but okay, the individual stuff was what I was talking about earlier when I referenced it. It seemed as if some of the numbers coming back, Devontae Adams had his way with Jalen Mills and Hunter Renfrow had some numbers, but they did much better. It seems you're saying in this 2-minute drill.
So the 2-minute drill was I think good for both the offense and the defense. We mentioned the offense before. They finish off with the touchdown to Bourne, but defensively, you go sack from Juwan Bentley, a short pass to the tight end, pass broken up by Adrian Phillips, should have been picked, incomplete from Derek Carr, sack by Uche, sack by Judon. pretty good finish.
Very
for
good
them.
finish.
So yes, again, took it on the chin in the one-on-ones. Jalen Mills was 0 for 3 against Devontae Adams. I had Miles Bryant as 0 for 3 against Hunter Renfrow. Jack Jones and Justin Bethel were the only two who were able to break up passes in the one-on-ones.
The one-on-ones are a bit, so people understand. The other guys should catch about 70% of them.
The offense,
So guys
you're right.
getting cooked.
They should win about 80% of those.
Were guys getting cooked though?
Big separation? So that's why it's pretty easy to say, definitively that Mills wasn't able to run with Devontae Adams. His worst rep, he tried to press Adams, wasn't able to do it, then held Adams. Adams ran through his hold and still caught a touchdown about 35, 40 yards down the field. So
you see the Kyle Pitts touchdown last night?
I did not.
Against Bryce Hall. Google Kyle Pitts touchdown. He lines up wide. It's the Falcons wide receiver. I said he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's just absurd.
Tom, can I ask you something?
Yeah, sorry about the Bryce Hall thing. I don't know who it was. He just
that's okay.
Friggin' ran past the guy.
It probably looked like that with Devontae Adams running by Jalen Mills. So good finish for all parties involved. The offensive line is something I want to ask you about because we have our friend Albert Breer saying that the Patriots are actively looking to deal Isaiah Wynn. Yeah. Trent Brown gets benched, and that's what it sounds like to me. It was a benching during the preseason game. He didn't play in that preseason game, and my understanding since then is that the team was not happy with his effort level during the week against the Panthers. That's what I've come to learn, and they let him know that. And so I don't know if it led directly to him not playing, but put one and one together. Kendrick Bourne also missed that game against the Panthers, that preseason game. Feels more disciplinary in nature than.
What are we dealing with here? I mean, this is a whole different podcast now. I mean, I didn't know the Trent Brown thing. What am I, asleep at the friggin' wheel out here?
No, this is just something that I've heard in the last 48 hours or so.
Jesus. So Kendrick Bourne's misbehaving. Trent Brown
and our friend Mike Reese did have it in his Twitter notes that he's always posting. He posted some of the game, and he said that it stood out to him that Trent Brown wasn't giving full effort. And we know our guy Mike Reese is always, number one, incredibly observant, but number two, incredibly plugged in. So that could have been both observed and informed.
Look, not rendering anything right now, but given the past 3 weeks, the way things have gone, fits and starts, good days, bad days, happy days, sad days, this level of dysfunction that we're seeing in terms of over the past week, fights, the need to have post-practice, come to Jesus meetings around the linemen on 2 different occasions, a continued insistence that we'll get it, when the hard evidence makes it difficult to believe that they are getting it. I'm not talking about buy-in. I'm sure they've got buy-in. It's how long before the guys who are suffering because of the outcome that they're seeing on the field, how long before they start to get agitated? Look, I'll use Isaiah Wynn as a perfect example. He's in the last year of his deal. He knows as a left tackle, he stands to make more money than he would as a right tackle. Even as an average left tackle, he's probably going to make $15 million a year. He comes back. He finds that the Patriots not only didn't pick up or give him an extension, but they're flipping him over to right tackle, which is basically putting a huge neon sign around his neck that says, not good enough for left tackle. So he's going to have to overcome that in the offseason. So he's not happy about those moves. And then now he's absent a little bit from camp. Then Trent Brown's not given full go. Apparently, reportedly, perhaps. These are the kinds of things that are going to leverage highly on this entire team, especially offensively. I'm going to say this, the defense, you couldn't be happier if you're a Patriots fan. Shit looks like it's going in the flowing nice through the body over there. But on the offense, which is the place where you've made the most decisions personnel-wise in terms of, parachuting out of Brady and moving on from Josh McDaniels, which again, Josh McDaniels, if the Patriots tried to convince him to stay, he'd have listened real good, but they didn't do that. So now they're revamping things with 2 guys that all these players know. have never done it before. So you're leveraging their futures a little bit. So it's easy to get buy-in. How long before the guys start muttering in the back of the class? So Phil, thanks for the go get them.
No, I think to me, whether it's the Trent Brown thing or it's just a practice here or there that is just devoid of energy or execution, there are all these small little fires that feel like they need to be put out. And you look up and we're into the last week of August and you play a game that matters on September 11th in Miami. And I asked Jacoby Myers about this yesterday, how much urgency is there to get things figured out? Because he described the 3 drives that the first team offense had against the Panthers, again, after 2 competitive joint practices, as a time for them to get their legs underneath them, which I get it. It's your first preseason action. Those guys really didn't play in the preseason opener, but it feels like they should be past this by now. Yep. And it feels like things are not, the trains are not running on time. I can't imagine Bill Belichick sitting there in May planning out training camp and saying, by August 23rd, for instance, I'll read you a quote from WEEI from Mac Jones today after practice. He says, I think we have really good players, really good skill players I can spread the ball around to, but every system's different, right? So it's kind of getting a feel for what you want to do, what your MO is as an offense. The big thing right now is figuring that out. Do you think Bill Belichick on August 23rd was planning on his offense, still trying to figure out their MO on offense, or the offensive line still trying to iron out the communication, which is supposed to help them think less, but in fact, because it hasn't taken to this point is maybe leading to some issues.
Maybe he did.
Maybe he did
think that. Maybe he said, what, that's what it is. 2022, reboot, reset. Okay. We'll win our 9 games. We'll win our 8 games. We'll win our 7 games. We're going to have a shit ton of cap space afterwards. Then we're going to go after it, hit the ground running in 2023. I mean, he's been around long enough to know the learning curve, doesn't he? That it's steep.
I would think, but he also hasn't had to do it in a long time. And he, you hire
Did
guys.
He underestimate the renovation? Did he decide that he was going to replace the counter and then realize that he had to also replace the dishwasher and the cabinets and a lot of the studs behind it that had rot? I mean, think about it. And he's got the plumber he's got the counter guy trying to do the plumbing. He ain't ready for it. I got to get ready for quick slants.
I think all that's fair. Okay, go get ready for your show.
Good shit.
Fun day down here. Interesting day. A lot to learn down here. We will talk again very soon. Another day.
You're going to have
tomorrow.
next Pats?
Next Pats tomorrow. So we'll have a bunch of takeaways. We also have the great Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports and The Athletic to talk about his annual Freaks list. That's always fun. So
awesome.
Draft stuff.
Right. Yeah. Phil and Bruce Feldman will be jumping on, and then we'll get full breakdown from Phil on Thursday, I think, because the game's Friday night. We'll circle back maybe Friday night after the games, keep you away from the craps table for a little while after the game. See ya.